Good evening, everyone. A little early. We're going to give folks time to join. We see a lot of people already jumping on pretty quick. So as soon as we have a room full, we'll get started.
Jason, are those maps from the race?
Yeah, don't let anybody see them. Can you make them fuzzy? It's really hard to get that poster back behind me.
Give folks just a few more minutes to jump in. Just a few more minutes, folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll give everyone about 2 more minutes, then we'll get started pretty close to on time. All right, about 1 more minute and we'll fire this thing up. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Pack, and with me is Julie Hymasoff. We are with the Ozark Foundation, a philanthropic foundation elevating the Ozarks region to be a better place to live, work, and play. And we're going to serve as your moderators for this session. Thank you for joining us for this virtual information session and an in-depth discussion on the 2024 Expedition Ozark and the premier multi-day adventure race in the United States, returning to the beautiful Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, April 7th through the 13th, 2024. A little housekeeping, a reminder, the Q&A function is enabled, and you're encouraged to send us the questions you have, and we'll do our best to answer all of them, or at least what we can get to in about an hour. The chat function is also enabled. We just ask you to keep it friendly. You're welcome to provide additional comments there, just know that we may likely not be able to directly address them during this session. Our panelists this evening are Expedition Ozark race directors Danny Collins and Jason Bettis. And the topic of our first question, gentlemen, I'm going to dive right in. Jason and Danny, to get us started, tell us a little bit about your background as racers and now race directors for the Expedition Ozark. Danny, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, great to do this. I'm excited to see a lot of people joining in, and hope this is worthwhile for everybody. But I pretty much, my entire history of adventure racing it's fitting that I'm co-race director with Jason, because pretty much my entire history is kind of been following Jason. So I started my first race in college, gonna get into it after playing collegiate soccer, and then just kind of found this sport of just loving and being in the woods and being a little bit different than some of the other types of sports, and kind of been addicted and to it ever since. So done a handful of everything from 6-hour races up to the 5-day expedition races. So.
Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and excited to be able to speak with everyone and see the interest in Expedition Ozark coming through here. My first race was in 2006, and it was an 8-hour race that some friends needed someone to join them for. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I was hooked ever since. Like Danny said, we started doing races when he was in college. I raced for Team Kuat for a long time. Danny moved away and came back and got back to doing some races. My hub kind of became a 24, 30-hour race, and have got into exhibition races, and have found the 5-day race to be a challenge and new challenge that I'm embracing to be able to team that. So it's a pretty good one. And as far as getting into Expedition Ozark, race directing, Danny came to me a couple years ago and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And so here we are.
Here we are indeed. All right, well, continuing on, and just a reminder to those that have joined us, we've got close to, I think, about 3 dozen attendees. You guys are welcome to drop questions in the Q&A, and we will file those into the questions we have prepared, but we'll keep the conversation going. Danny and Jason, what should training be like for a first-time adventure racer that is considering Expedition Ozark? And I know, maybe not all those attending are first timers, but maybe just touch a little bit on what a first timer should expect as it pertains to training for an event like this.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, I think mostly focused on, not just the first timers, but specifically trying to curate that towards kind of our region for those that might be chiming in that aren't as familiar with the Ozarks is, it can be, the weather can be anything where we are. We'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but last year we had a in our mind, very successful race, very fun, got through what we wanted to get through with it, and it included a lot of water. And so that's one thing to definitely keep in mind, that it's in the front and center of our planning. And with water in April can come amazingly beautiful days, or it can come incredibly cold temperatures. And so just being beyond the fact of being physically prepared and training that stuff, is just being mentally and then just prepared packing wise on what that gear entails and what that experience is like. Doing these different activities in potentially, absolutely, I think last year we had an 80-degree day, and then we had weather that was, down into the low 20s at one point in time. So that's one thing to denote for this. I think there's probably a lot of attendees here that are veterans, not completely first timers, but that's something that's maybe relatively unique to this time of year for this race in the Ozarks.
Good. Well, let's keep moving on. And sticking kind of with like some of that, we're talking strategy a little bit. Jason, we'll start with you. What are some key nutrition and hydration strategies for an event like the Expedition Ozark?
Oh, it's unique. I think there's a couple of different ideas we can go off of. I think as an individual, you need to know what works best for you. Know what foods are user friendly. I would suggest is for a new racer, don't try something new. Save the race. Make sure you try it on your training days. And so that's a good thing. I think that not only knowing what we like to eat, but knowing what our strengths and limitations are. Am I going to get too focused on reading the map to eat, or am I going to get too focused on helping another teammate to eat, or something like that? So the second concept to that would be having somebody on the team that can help to reinforce that. Say, hey guys, it's time to eat. Been a half hour, been an hour. Recently had a teammate that would, take food out and like, hey, you want a bite? and that would get you going too. Like, oh yeah, thank you. I'm hungry. I almost forgot. So
Yeah, absolutely. Danny, any thoughts on the food or hydration strategies associated with this specific event?
I think the one thing to keep in mind, and I think anybody that raced last year would probably reiterate this again, trying to focus on the uniqueness of our race is Arkansas is more remote than you might really realize. And I think last year there was a lot of teams were incredibly surprised with the lack of facilities along the race course. So, myself included in these races, generally try to understand and bank on the fact that if we see some sort of ability to go get some food somewhere, we're going to do that. This race is not going to be, it's probably going to be, I guess I potentially say it maybe even more remote this year than it was last year in portions of the course. And so to just keep that in mind that it is potential that you go 24, 48 hours of the course without seeing really anything, let alone a place to get some warm hot food. So just take that into consideration when you're thinking about, especially for the food side of things. That being said, there's a plethora of water this time of year, and most of our streams and rivers are relatively clean, and pretty confidently to be able to do a simple purification and have that at access almost anywhere during the course.
I love that. And that's a good segue. We actually have we got a question from an attendee, John. He asked, any comparisons from last year's course to this year? And Danny, this is something we talked about ahead of time, but based on last year, what can our returning athletes expect for this 2024 edition?
we'll still have the same fun terrain. We'll still have the fun hills, and we'll still have the fun downhills. It'll be beautiful. A lot of Arkansas is very beautiful. Where the races are going to be, they're going to have some very breathtaking moments when they see where they're at. That's all I can say.
And the
I would
maps
just
are
add
from
that-
last year, right? The maps are from last year, folks.
Yeah. That's old school.
I mean, we love our water. There's a reason that we're choosing April to do this, as of now. And so I don't think that that's giving anything away, is that Jason and I always kind of, at least from my perspective, we kind of take the water and kind of then sprinkle in the highlights we want around that and kind of connect the dots, right? And so that's one thing to just keep in mind is, it's definitely going to be having water components for sure. And then the second thing would be, we are the mountain bike capital of the world. And so we have amazing trail systems that are kind of littered all across the state, not just in Northwest Arkansas. And so that's another thing to just be expecting to be on some amazing single track. This is not a course probably ever that we'd recommend anything but a comfortable bike to be on some long mileage on some nice gnarly single track.
Yeah, that's a good segue into technical abilities, and not just on the bike but also paddling. And we've got a few questions we'll get to, but when we talk about technical abilities on and off the bike, what are the abilities does someone need to have to possess for paddling in a race like this? For someone that hasn't experienced it, what can they expect when they find themselves paddling in the dark? I think that's something that comes up often in these conversations. Jason, you want to start?
Oh, I remember some racers saying last year that there was some fog on the river, paddling at night, and so that made for a fun moment trying to get there to see, with the fog right in their headlamp, and that kind of made they had to tone their headlamp down. So that was unique. And I feel comfortable with the water. I don't feel like it's going to be anything that anybody should be too incredibly afraid of. It's not. I don't think it's going to be too gnarly. I think it'll be very. That's all I'll say about that.
Gotcha. Man, a few words, Jason.
I know, man, it's tough.
I get you. I get you. No, and that's
Yeah.
good. But Danny, you got anything
Sorry.
to add to that? Or?
No, just really, I agree. I mean, it's, I think that we're not looking to make or break a race on the paddle sections. We're looking for that in a lot of ways is one of the most beautiful elements of the Ozarks in the spring. So just kind of think about it from that perspective. But, it's also, I think it's really also just keep in mind, we did have, I think, 3 or 4 teams, bust out their pack rafts or, so being not, if this is your first time using a pack raft for a race, be understanding how to pack, Band-Aid that thing up and have the tools necessary to be able to do that. We did have a even maybe say surprising amount of teams that had some issues. It's not that we have an incredible, rocky type of water, but it's with the fluctuating levels of the river, you do have some areas that you do have some potential issues to maybe not capsize you as much, but potentially tear out a pack raft. So that's one thing that's just always keep that in mind, that our terrain is especially with the incorporation like last year, with 3 big rivers last year, different than your kind of dead bodies of water, right?
Yeah, and let's stay with that because that seems to be a hot topic in the Q&A, specifically 2-pack rafts and what you can tell us. Will the paddling, this is kind of 2-part. Kate asked, will the paddling be pack rafts or will there be other watercraft provided? Is that something we can,
We'll probably let them know that for sure when they get their itinerary.
Okay.
Nice try. Nice try.
Nice try. Again, they're asking them. Okay, but staying in that same realm, and maybe this one we can get a little closer to for Carl is, are there any outfitters that we work with in the area or ones we'd recommend, say that they do need to rent a pack raft or other related gear? Is there some suppliers here locally that we would consider recommending?
Yeah, I mean, pack rafts are definitely mandatory gear, right? So there you will be on a pack raft. We're not stating yet if you're going to be on other vessels. Last year we did, just for example, we did have a portion where we did put people in the teams in canoes and kayaks. But pack rafts are definitely mandatory. We don't have anything completely local here, but we do have a couple posted on our website of rental services that give a discount to the teams and also are willing to ship straight to us, right? So keep that in mind with being able to practice using that, right? And the limitations of that, but obviously there are, pack rafts are probably the hardest thing for teams to travel with and acquire and pricing and all that stuff too. So it's definitely a good option. I think all the teams that did use it last year had a really great experience. Everything was on time and it was, high quality vessels.
Mm-hmm. Jason, you said itinerary. Why don't we just first, maybe some of the first timers, remind folks when you say itinerary, when can they expect to receive that itinerary in a competition like this?
What are we thinking, Danny? 2 weeks out?
Yeah, generally we'll probably send the race schematic about a month out. Last year I think it was about 4 weeks out, and so we'll be aiming to do that somewhere in that 3 to 4 weeks out. Where you'll get the schematic, and that schematic, in case this is your first expedition race, it's pretty common, but that schematic will have not extreme details, but it'll paint a picture of the different stages of the race and give approximate time spent in each of those. And then at each of those, that'll be your first glimpse of kind of how many transition areas we'll have and what equipment you'll have at that. So again, at the risk of potentially overstating this for anybody that's done a race like this before, but you will have paddle bags, you'll have gear bins and bike boxes for this race. We'll announce the numbers of those at a later date, but you could think that you'll have those 3 similar things at your use throughout the entire race, and we'll be shuttling those for you through different transition areas. And so you'll packing based on that schematic. You'll already kind of have that equipment list right now. The mandatory equipment list. You could start acquiring those things and start to think about, how much food based on the hours spent and, kind of from that capacity. But then when you get that race schematic, then it's really heads down saying, okay, I'm putting this many calories in this equipment, in this gear bin, or in this bike box, or in this paddle bag, to be able to get them at different times throughout the race. And so that'll be very similar to last year. We'll have, relatively speaking, about the same amount of movement of a lot of equipment.
Perfect. Yeah, that was one of the questions Mary asked, and this may be something we don't know yet, but could they expect to do 2 separate paddle bags again next year? Maybe if you can't go into detail about that specifically, maybe talk a little bit about what equipment will be moved or staged for the race for some of those that maybe don't. I know you were just kind of getting to that point, but maybe a little bit more on how that process works for these athletes.
Yeah, I'll state it here. We will probably not do the 2 paddle bags this year. That was something that both Jason and I kind of talked about afterwards. It might have been a little bit unnecessary. Again, we haven't stated that completely yet, but likely we will adjust that and just have the 1 paddle bag instead of having paddle bag 1 and 2 for those that did the race last year. But other than that, we'll also have, the bike boxes and probably the same concept of gear bins as last year. And so you could expect to have, somewhere around that 10-ish transition areas again. I think last year was 12 or 13. I think this year Kent State probably have a couple slightly longer legs, so maybe a little bit less on transition areas. But again, you won't really know that until the transition until that race schematic comes out. And but generally speaking, we're looking at these larger transition areas to happen at some sort of level of frequency, and you kind of have a relatively good option from a gear bin or your bike box at your use, right?
Let's shift back to a little bit. Carlos from Ecuador will shift the narrative back to, let's talk everyone's favorite subject, weather. You can give it, we had some weather last year, and Carlos from Ecuador wants to know, what can we expect for weather, minimal and max temp? What is it rainy? What should these athletes be preparing for as it pertains to weather in the Ozarks in April?
It can be very variable that time of year. Like Danny said, last year we had temperatures in 20 degrees Fahrenheit up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And the rain can be heavy or light. With those temps, we could potentially have, possibly have snow. And I believe I looked it up last year. I think what the low temperature was in Bentonville at that time, it was what the record was, and I think it was like 9 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty chilly. I mean, even by today's standard, like, wow, that's really cold for April. Doesn't get that cold very often, but I would definitely keep an eye on the weather. You can look at the historical ranges and see what is possible, and be able to prepare, for that.
Perfect. Sticking with that, and because with weather comes safety. So let's talk a little bit about like logistics and those safety logistics that the event, the Expedition Ozark, will have in place to keep the competition safe. Truly, and what we've already said is going to be a backcountry race. Like, what are maybe just put some folks at ease about the level of logistics and safety that goes into the planning of the Expedition Ozark.
Yeah, I mean, to first gonna add a little bit more to the weather side of things. The other thing to note is it's in April. That's about 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night, right? So that's something else to keep in mind too, is that it's right about that kind of 50% of daylight of your 24-hour period. Generally speaking, the difference of rain across the year in when it happens in the spring is that you will get these big bursts. And so that's kind of as of last year, what you might have heard about is if you were not at the race, we had a tornado warning. Unfortunately, this is the time of year when those kind of things start to potentially be something to watch. you get these big storms that come in and just bust through and change drastically, generally drastically change the temperatures when they come and pass through. And that's kind of where the quote unquote potential for things like tornadoes happen. Last year we did have a tornado warning come through, and we did have a mandatory shelter in place throughout the race. I think that generally speaking, we were really happy how that worked, and that's kind of a similar system if something does happen. But when those storms come through, that's when you can kind of see the shift in the temperature as well. But generally speaking, again, in the spring, when the sun comes out, it's a very pleasant day. It's not overly bearingly hot. Generally, it's really, really great temperatures during the day. So, Carlos, I'm actually taking this call here from Ecuador right now. I'm in Cumbaya, and it's, very similar to, you get up as soon as that sun goes down, you get quite a bit of a drop in that temperature, right? And so expect chilly nights for sure, no matter what. So race, the safety thing, I just talked a little bit about the tornado warning. That's definitely something that we will absolutely have our head on a swivel for, and we will take very seriously, just like we did last year. If we have to, we'll do it the most fair way possible, but we will not be scared about taking a shelter in place type of approach. The other thing to keep about, and I think the highest potential in our mind is always for danger is around the water. Our river systems here we don't have snow-capped mountains, so they're not snow melt. They're 100% rain dependent, for the most part, right? And so the incredible fluctuations happen when these storms come in. And so we have a green, yellow, red type of system for all the bodies of water that we're on. It's a combination of temperature, water temperature, air temperature, and water levels. And so, that's something that we will dictate really, really well. And we have backup alternative routes for all the bodies of water that some teams might have to do and some might not have to do. It's just that the April can change pretty quickly on water level stuff. So, and then other than that, we do overstaff the kind of from the medical side of things on those really remote areas. Our goal is to always be within a 20 to 30 minutes of every single, have somebody be 20 to 30 minutes from every single portion of the race, right? And so that's kind of the way we look at strategically placing staff and or medical team members.
Also, from a safety standpoint, safety is pretty huge for me. I mean, it's something that I really look into while making a course routes, course design, that kind of thing. And last year with that race, with our team, I felt very comfortable with the medical staff and the safety people, everybody involved. It was like the number one thing. Like, man, those guys are on top of it. So very proud of them and happy that they're back.
Very good. Very good. Carlos, he had a follow-up question. I'll answer it. He's wanting to know about, host hotels for the international teams. Yes, Carlos, we have secured that. That information will be coming soon. So we do have a host hotel partner. And your question specifically to, can you pre-ship in items to the hotel? Yes, most of our hotel will allow pre-event shipment for teams, as most hotels do, especially around this area. They're used to shipments coming into the hotels. So we'll be able to accommodate those needs if you guys are looking to ship stuff in. And we'll have some of that information available pretty quick, probably around the turn of the year, as far as it pertains to host hotel accommodations and some things of that nature. Let's shift to a little bit of fun stuff here. And this would be Kit asked, will there be a dark zone during the total solar eclipse? And so there's no secret that this race starts the same day as a total solar eclipse. The state of Arkansas is in the line of totality. Jason, Danny, who wants to maybe let people in just a little bit on the opportunity we have to really create a unique experience for the athletes as it pertains to aligning this race with the eclipse.
We're not saying what, but you'll get to see it go dark. So
get your headlamp.
Yeah, you'll have extra 4 minutes of darkness that day, something like that. But yeah, no, I mean, it's an amazing thing, rare experience that we get to have this happening the same. And, in total transparency, it was kind of one of those that, it just happened to be the same week we wanted it to, and we're just like, wow, that's an opportunity. Let's kind of grab onto a little bit more. So, but that being said, it's special, and we want to make it special, and so we have plans to make it special. But no, we're not giving away what that means yet.
Just it'll be special. I love
It
it.
will be.
Speaking of special, because this is a special time when let's talk about that special time where sleep deprivation starts to set in, and how do you manage for an event, for maybe for some people that haven't done a 5-day experience yet, how do you manage sleep for an event lasting 120 hours? Talk a little bit about sleep strategies as it pertains to the Expedition Ozark.
I think each team probably has their own very specific sleep strategy based off of their experiences. Everybody knows what they can do, or how many hours they can go, how many hours of sleep that they're going to need, and when they're kind of pushing their limit. So that's something that the teams are going to talk about and figure out what they think they need every night, how many hours of sleep to meet the goals that they have set for the race. I think when we did Adventure Race World Series Championships, our goal was to go through the first night no sleep, and then the second night begin sleeping 3 hours a night. And we made it through the first night, and in the midday next day we're like, okay, nap time. So we took a 20 or 30-minute nap, and that did what we needed, and we were able to get back on our schedule. So having a strategy that works best for your team, having the ability to adapt to what needs to be done, if that means taking just a short 20-minute nap, then having that ability to adapt to that to be able to keep moving forward is a good thing.
And then as it pertains to Expedition Ozark specifically, the two things again, I mean, anybody that did our race last year probably be relatively similar feeling for the transition areas. Some of them are pretty raw, right? And so don't always think of a transition area as a obvious choice for a very comfortable sleeping setting. But some might be better than others, in that ways. And then the other thing to keep in mind for our race is, nights are chilly, right? And so just kind of, factor that into your plans for, for those sleeping patterns is, a lot of teams will strategize on if it's colder nights and colder evenings, then sleeping might make more sense when it's, in those warmer temperatures versus the incredible cold when you want to keep moving. And, but again, those are two just facts about our race to kind of just maybe overemphasize is definitely raw transition areas, in some of these parts of this place that will be.
Perfect. Yep. Appreciate that. So you've mentioned some teams real quick in the Q&A. There is currently we've been filtering those questions through, so just keep them coming. There's a lot of people have joined, and so don't be shy. Just filter those questions in. We'd be happy to have Danny and Jason answer those, but we'll keep going. We have a few more. Speaking of team dynamic, and maybe this goes back to the two of you as athletes yourselves, but each team dynamic is unique. But that said, there is some general team member roles associated and responsibilities associated with the sport of adventure racing. Maybe talk a little bit about those different roles and the dynamics of these teams as they come together, and some look to compete in their first ever, 5-day adventure race.
Well, from a team dynamic standpoint, you can have, there's a lot of different roles and a lot of different things that people can do. Like I said, to keep the team moving forward in a positive direction. Typically you have a team captain. We've had teammates that were the mother hen. We had lead navigator, secondary navigator, tertiary navigator. And there are times when it'd be like, okay, I am not capable of navigating. Please take the map. I need to take a break, and being able to communicate those needs is a good thing. Having somebody that will, we've had a pack mule where somebody that's, somebody's hurting, they'll let me have your pack, let me take your pack, give you a minute just to take a break, take the load off your back, give you that time that you need to be able to recuperate so we can, keep moving forward. It's always good to have somebody on the team that is a mechanic that can fix a bike, or that can patch a pack rack. If something like that comes up, knowing how to use those tools is a good thing. So there's a lot of different roles, and just make sure that everybody has a understanding of what every other person can do, is a large component.
Danny, any thoughts there on some of those team dynamics you've experienced over the years?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that I find myself always in that role as Jason being a lead navigator for the team I'm always on, is kind of just fill in a little bit of everything kind of behind him in a lot of ways. And there's lots of different roles that need to be had, just like Jason said. But again, trying to bring it specifically to our race in some ways I don't think it's incredibly unique, but it is something to consider, is that we move from activity to activity often, right? And maybe comparatively speaking to some races more often. And, it is a very different experience paddling, like we did last year, and our biking is, not only these long potential legs on gravel types of roads, but you also start to get into that single track. And so there's different potential individuals that might be better at navigating in those very different situations. So to kind of keep that as a mindset of potentially, if you do got 2 to 3 strong navigators, breaking it up by activity might be a great race to think about it from that capacity. And our bodies of water are, anybody's talks about it from last year, that is it's more difficult than you'd think to navigate on both our rivers and our lakes for so many different reasons. And so to just keep that in mind, we do like to use pack rafts for multiple reasons, not just to make you bring them for boats, but anybody can speak to last year's, we tried to find fun exploratory places for you to put those boats in the water and take them out of the water. And that's something that we love as unique race designers, not just to make it difficult or need you to carry your pack raft. It's more for just kind of to have the flow of the course be that exceptional and get to see something more unique by taking off the water or putting on the water at a different place. So keeping those two things in mind from the navigation side, especially.
No, let's stay with that. And Jason being a lead navigator, this comes up often, right? This is one of the things that comes up often is, what are some tips for practicing navigation for a race like Expedition Ozark? What are some things folks can do at home as they look to increase their own navigation skills? Maybe they're going to take that role on their team. Any tips about navigation itself?
Sure. Sure. Like in our area, there are a couple of groups. In the region, Kansas City and St. Louis have a couple of orienteering groups, clubs. St. Louis Orienteering Club and Possum Trot Orienteering Club in Kansas City. Both put on meets. So going to those events, practicing your navigation skills is a good thing. If you can't make it to that location, Mark Latanzi makes a great book called Squiggly Lines. It's very detailed. It'll teach you how to navigate. It's a great place to start, or even as an experienced navigator to go back and fall on and read again. And there's ways to get topographical maps of an area where you live, someplace you're training. You're like, okay, how does this connect? How does this terrain work out? How do these trails work? You can get online and make or print a topographical map of your area and use that. Make that part of your training day. Set up some points on it. And just, okay, how do I get to this hilltop or this reentrance? Or, what is in that location? Why are those lines so tight on the topographical map? What does that mean? Go to find out what's there. Explore a little bit with those.
Perfect. We're getting some more questions coming in. There's some good ones in here. So I love this question. And for those that have not been here, there does not appear to be much elevation in the Ozarks. Is
No,
this
yeah.
pretty much a sprint course? Does anyone, as a cyclist, I'm happy to address that. I will tell you that feet per mile, there's more elevation in the Ozarks than there is the Great Divide mountain bike route that goes from Canada to Mexico. And so I think what people are regularly surprised at how punchy the Ozarks are and how quick the elevation adds up with the topography that we have. I don't know, Jason, Danny, you want to talk a little bit about the Ozarks and how special the elevation is around here?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a surprise to almost anybody that comes and sees how quick and often we drop and climb, and we have some really meaty climbs. So I do not take that for granted at all. I mean, really, there's a lot of elevation in this course, or in last year's course, and there will be a lot of elevation change in this course as well. With that, I think we also do have quite a variety of types of terrain. We have a lot of karst type of topography that is a very different setting from other different regions where you get these large potential boulders and very rocky terrain. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, this time of year is, you never get to know exactly when it happens. Last year it was pretty amazing. I think we literally hit the week where you get redbuds in dogwoods, and that around here in April is generally in April when that hits is kind of that magical week where you get them both, but you're kind of before some of the mean stuff starts to come in. But that sometimes can happen quicker and earlier in the year, and you could be doing a lot of your trekking, especially in off-trail navigation, in some mean kind of vegetation that could be growing up already. Last year we did have some teams that had some issues with some poison ivy. That was some really early stages of that. It just started to pop up. But other than that, it's definitely the terrain is quite exceptional, quite beautiful, incredible bluffs, and it drops, really quickly. Especially when we incorporate, the river systems. Those river systems are what carve the land. And so you got a lot of climbs associated with those. But other than that, we also have an incredible network of gravel roads that are just relatively pristine and beautiful. And those are also have some amazing changes in elevation associated with them too.
Agreed. Yeah, our friend Joe Jacobs from Arkansas Outside, he likes to say that our mountains might not be high, but our valleys sure are low, and that's pretty characteristic of the Ozarks. Okay, well, let's stick with that. The Ozarks, truly does, they are unique. They're the only contiguous range from the Rockies to the Appalachians. People don't generally associate Northwest Arkansas with mountains, but what makes this race different than other ARWS races? Is it the terrain? Is it the overall experience? We've already talked a lot about potential weather conditions in April, where it can be, it can be anywhere from, 20 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit or somewhere in between. But, for you as race directors, you guys have been out there, we're going into year 2, truly what separates this race from others in the series?
For me in the Ozarks, it's the beauty. It's the beauty of the terrain, the hills. They can be a meaty to climb, that's for sure, but they're beautiful. Looking over the hillside, seeing the valley below, get to the top, and you can see for quite a ways and see multiple hilltops. It's very, very pretty. Like Danny said, hopefully we will be in a window with the redbud blooming, and little leaves coming on the trees. So it's kind of a magical time of year. And of course, the eclipse is going to be happening at the same time. So, many beautiful things to see. And so for me, that's really what it is. It's the beauty of the Ozarks. In my mind, what helps to separate the race.
For me, it's I think in the spring in the Ozarks, when you have the dogwoods and redbuds starting to pop, and then you have just the Ozarks comes to life when the rivers start to come to life and the water starts to move, right? So, that spring is just a really, really special place. So I would agree it's the beauty. I would probably, really focus on the water is the most amazing thing for me. And that's the reason we do it this time of year, is to be able to incorporate those things. And then, from the capacity of how Jason and I approach the design of this course is, our goal is and has always been is that there is a wide variety, and we'll have pro points and mandatory points. I guess I can kind of side note talk about that again this year, but it's somewhat common in the United States. It might not be as common in some of the other ARWS across the world, but we'll have mandatory points. And it probably we'll announce how much, kind of estimations of mileage based on that versus pro points, as we did last year. But very comparable to what it was last year, which I think it was somewhere around, 75%, of it was pro points, or sorry, was mandatory points, and 25% of the course was pro point makeup. But that's the reason we do that, and kind of some other strategies is to make this, I don't know if beginner friendly is the right way, but possibly, yeah, beginner friendly. We're here to just exceed expectations of beauty. We want to hit you with that sense of adrenaline, and a shot of beauty at the right time in the course. And so we're really looking at designing this to be, our friends over at Bend Racing, we're not really looking to quote unquote compete with the concept of America's toughest race, right? It's just that's our strategy, that's their strategy. Our strategy is relatively different, and we're focused on it being a really amazingly beautiful, fun race that you are just every day amazed at what you're seeing, and that's kind of our main focal point. So
Perfect. Yeah, I would agree. We could talk all day about the beauty of the Ozarks. But speaking about getting here, somebody asked about the best way to travel in. Julie, you might have answered this offline, but it is, XNA, which is a national airport based right here in Northwest Arkansas. I think we've got 21 directs from major metros around the country. And so getting to Northwest Arkansas, kind of this central part of the state, you can get here with ease. There's a lot of major interstates that funnel right through Northwest Arkansas. And so for folks looking to travel in, I think you'll find it relatively easy as it pertains to specifically those looking to fly in. You can get here pretty much with ease. There's major connectors from all the major metros that you're going to find, from DFW to Atlanta to Chicago to Denver. You're going to be able to get here pretty quick. And this is something, and for first timers, just, we've talked a lot about strategy and the different things associated with the race and logistics and maps. For those that don't know, when do racers actually get maps?
Last year, we gave them to them the race morning,
and
they had the opportunity to take a look at them before the race began. And so, of course, we'll give that information out when the time is right, and they'll get their maps and make a choice on where they're going to go from the start to the first checkpoint. And
they're not coming in the mail, right, Jason?
No, we're not going to mail them. Yeah. No, they'll be hand delivered.
Yeah, there you go. Right, pretty close to race time. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's see what else we have here. We got compliments on the band last year. I will say that about specific to closing ceremonies, we are planning a pretty special closing ceremony, just like we did last year. For those that joined us, we had an opening and then closing ceremony. And so you can expect similar pageantry. We truly want to celebrate the internationality of this event, as athletes truly come from all over the world to compete here in the Ozarks, and we're excited to recognize those efforts. So you can plan on some pretty special things with the closing ceremony. John, I'll check on that band, and evidently we'll see if we can, maybe, who knows, maybe we can get the same. Speaking of maps, Evan asked, will we get one set or two? Is that so? Again, these are just some of those questions getting in the weeds, but I don't know if that's something you guys are able to answer. Or we just any advice there for Evan?
We did 2 sets last year, and I liked that idea.
Okay, we'll do 2 sets again. You're so great. We'll do 2 sets again. We think that's the right way to do it. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have two sets again this year. And, to reiterate what you just talked about earlier, Brandon, but I think that, I kind of missed that on what's the most special about our race is, our Northwest Arkansas community is unreal at how it comes out for these events. Last year, every one of us on this call were just bewildered by how many of people in our community were just obsessively dot watching and going. I mean, there was times where I would be out in the middle of the day, kind of following the lead racers, and there's 30 people on this bridge over this river watching and like asking them, how are they there? And they're like, well, we're just dot watching. We're just intrigued. And we went out. And so, and then not only that, I think, hundreds, if not thousands of people at kind of our ending ceremony. And so, this is something, outdoor recreation is a incredible focus of the entire state of Arkansas. Everything from, our first gentleman, Brian Sanders, and, so it's literally within the politics of it, to the amazing leaders of our community, the Walton family and a lot of the other families. We just really do bleed the concept of outdoor recreation. It's the thing that brings us all together. And so, without badgering it too much, it is a special ending. And I think anybody that raced last year would agree that might be one of the most amazing, celebrated, finish lines. And that's a goal we'll always have, is that we want to kind of celebrate the fact that our community loves this kind of stuff and comes out to support it.
Agreed. And speaking of that, we had somebody ask about major urban areas in the region. And I would say that Northwest Arkansas collectively is that region you're looking for. It is a metro at this point. We've reached over 500,000. And for those looking to bring their family, there's going to be plenty for your family to do. We are all in on outdoor recreation. Just from a participatory standpoint, the region's home to just over 500 miles of accessible mountain bike trails. We've got over 200 miles of paved trails. We've got world-class art museums. We've got world-class theaters. I mean, there's something for everybody in all ages. So absolutely bring the family. They're not going to be ready to go home when you are. I mean, there's just that much to do. And, there truly is a quality of life and a pretty special place that's being built here in Northwest Arkansas. And so bring the kids, they'll have a good time. Speaking of looking at this, thanks, John. John says community sport was second to none last year. Speaking of teams and that finish line, what is the total number of team capacity for the event? I know last year we had 30 teams take part in the expedition race. I know we're looking at that already, starting to get close to that number, which is exciting. We're not even to January yet. We know we do have the capacity to stretch to, I don't know, Danny, 40 teams. What do you think makes a good race here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the numbers we hit last year it was a perfect for first year, and really for any race. It allowed, we had a lot of spread. We had some amazing teams, and we had an incredible, I think literally it was really close to a third new teams, first ever expedition to, kind of in that quote unquote pro category, international team category. And so that to us is our special desire, is to have that really amazing makeup of beginner-esque expedition and we already, from the signups that we have this, like you said, I don't think we've posted. I think we'll post after the first of the year. I think we'll post the team list that we're at, I think is what we decided. But generally speaking, we're already getting pretty close to those numbers. And so, yeah, I think, we're looking to have it open to somewhere around 35, 40, stretch a little bit more than we did last year. But really what we're excited about is that we can already state that we're going to have an incredibly amazing makeup of maybe even more amazing top tier teams than last year, which is crazy, the amount of them, as stated as how they did at World Championships recently. And we got a lot of returning for their second and first race. So that's kind of the special thing for us that we're really excited about.
Perfect. Yep, I would agree. We're going to back up real quick on this maps, because you say it and more people are asking, but the 2-person teams, are they going to get one set of maps or two? Timothy and David both asking that question. And so, this is, I'll let you guys quickly quickly touch on that. And if we don't know, then maybe it'll be a surprise. But what do you think about our two-person teams?
That's a good question. I don't know that we've dug that far into the in the process of that yet. We'll make a decision on that and relay that information soon.
All right, there you go. Tim, David, stay tuned.
Sorry.
It'll be some breaking news.
That's all right.
For y'all. Love that. Okay, sticking with some of our team needs. So we're going to stick in this. I'm glad we're diving into this, but we got just a few minutes left. But somebody wants to know about special dietary requirements. Is that something we can accommodate? What is the process there of our athletes that might have special dietary requirements? Is that something that's the question that we've been asked?
Well, I mean, from two different, during the race, I'll probably just state no. We'll probably, if we do have any opportunities for food, that's really not, generally speaking, look at it how it was last year. It wasn't really us putting that on. It was working with the groups that are physically owning the transition areas that are kind of putting that on. So I don't think we'd have the capacity to be able to help out with during the race if we had any of those. And we're not ever stating really that we for sure will have food facilities there. A lot of them are just, we're saying there is food available there from a different outside of the race organization. But yes, if outside of the race, for kind of our pre and post, if we do have functions like that include food, then that's definitely something that we will, please do extra email Julie, Brandon, or either Jason or I, and make sure that we can kind of know about that and accommodate that for anything outside the race itself. But during the race, bring your own stuff and make sure that you have enough or come early enough to purchase it locally.
Agreed. Julie, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Just to add to that, we'll send a questionnaire for anyone that's coming in to race and ask for specific dietary requirements. So at the finish line and then before and after, we make sure we have food options that are available. There are different restrictions.
Yep. So as you register, just stay tuned. You will be getting a survey that includes some of those exact questions that you're inquiring about as it pertains to food. So we will take care of you pre and post. The race, you're potentially on your own. So to be expected. We are just a few minutes from finishing. I do want to give Jason, Danny, we've covered a lot in this conversation. Is there any closing remarks or anything that we didn't touch on that you just wanted to make sure to include in this info session?
The only thing that I really remember a lot from last year were the smiling faces at the finish line and giving those racers a hug at the end. And that was a very memorable moment for me and something that I'll carry with me forever. And I'm looking forward to that experience again in 24.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, this being second year is we learned a lot. And I think a lot of the stuff that we learned hopefully wasn't visible from the racer's standpoint, which I think was very successful. But that also is just attuned to the amazing volunteer and staff that we had helping out with the race last year. So that's one thing. Definitely want to just make sure that everybody, that we give them credit for what they were, and this race is incredibly special because of that. And we already have a lot of them reaching back out again this year, which is just incredible to see that we're going to have an amazing help. And it was really special that every single one of our transition areas almost felt like a finish line in a lot of ways, from the groups that were there and celebrating people coming in. And but no, other than that, just it was an amazing year, and we were so excited to showcase and try to accept the challenge of topping what we did last year from the race course design. It's not easy from what people said, and we're very excited to at the heart of everything I want is more people to just fall in love with what we have here in the Ozarks, and we're excited to do that through this outlet. So please do, yeah, think about coming and it will be a memorable experience that that you'll never forget in so many ways.
Thank you. Well said. Well said, Penny. All right, folks, we want to thank everyone for their time and interest in the 2024 Expedition Ozark. You can find additional information on our website at expeditionozark.com. And we encourage you to follow along on our social media channels. That's at Expedition Ozark, both on Instagram and Facebook. Quick reminder that our early registration promo is set to expire December 31st, and teams can save up to $500 if you register before the end of the year. So we encourage you, if this is something you are definitely looking to do, to consider signing up before the end of the year and take advantage of those savings. With that, I would say we are on time, and happy holidays, everyone. Stay safe, keep training, and we'll see you in April. Thank you.